Hey, this is gonna be a raw talk. I'm not gonna script this, and I want to keep this like as organic as possible and really go with the first words that come to mind. I was literally about to go ahead and write in my notebook a few notes on exactly what I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to keep this as raw and real as I possibly could. And I wanted to talk about how I was able to overcome a crippling low self-esteem, a lot of people-pleasing syndrome, and large amounts of depression and anxiety towards being a confident business owner who fully backs himself, loves himself. We've generated almost $1 million now for our client group, around like 810,000. We've made over 6 figures in business ourselves. And it was a long journey to get to where I am now. I think to go over everything, it's good to go back in the past to walk you through exactly where I was before all this. So I grew up and with the job that my dad did, we moved around a lot every 4 years. So I grew up in like Malaysia, Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand. Then I went to university in the United Kingdom, and I went to Manchester and London. Never really had a solid friendship group, never really had a good base, right? And when I was a teenager, I started really getting into booze, substances, and finding different escapes. Like I was basically lashing out against the world. I blamed everything else but myself. I thought life wasn't fair. And I found pleasure in just destroying my soul, my body, and everything, right? I was super self-destructive. And I did that for almost like 7 years. So when I was like 14 all the way to when I was around 22, I was basically plowing myself with booze and many different other things, hanging with the wrong people, doing things that were frowned upon and illegal at times. And I had no self-respect, right? Like I really didn't care about myself, and I just wanted to cause damage to everything around me. And what happened there was that behavior caused like an insane amount of damage to my own self and my own identity, right? Because I literally didn't give myself a chance to build an identity, because all I did was become intoxicated and hate myself and talk badly on myself. And doing that for a few years kind of handicaps you, right? I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off. And there was something about like why I did all of that. Like I always had some sort of energy in me that made me super restless, right? It always made me feel like I didn't fit, like something, I didn't really fit the mold of how I was feeling or where I was living in the moment. And as a teenager, the only way I knew how to cope was to go ahead and get really fucked up. But that energy, that restlessness wasn't necessarily bad. It just had to go somewhere, right? And for the longest time, even when I remember when I was a little child, I always wanted more. It sounds really bad, but I always knew I was destined to do big things, like really move big things around and make a difference, make impact, right? Change the world. Really, I swear to God, I was telling myself that. And throughout the years when I grew up and I couldn't cope with that feeling of restlessness, I lost my way, right? In the alcohol and the booze and the drugs. But there was still that little kernel of, I want to make impact. I want to do something big. I just didn't know where to channel that energy. And so what happened was when I finally sobered up, so this is when I was around 22 to 23, I just finished my master's degree and I got into the professional market. For context, I studied psychology and clinical neuropsychiatry in university. I was meant to go into healthcare. And I finished university, I go into the job market, and I quickly realized that I hate it. I had a lovely job. My first job that I got out, my first and only job, was working at a recovery center where I helped teenagers who are going through mental health issues and addiction issues basically recover and adapt to normal society. I loved that. But the fact that I was going to do something that wasn't necessarily aligned with my goals and values for the rest of my life, just so I could get money to survive in society, was a notion that really fucked with me a lot. Like, I just had a natural aversion to it. I was like, wow, it can't really be it. And very quickly after I got out of university and I started working, I told myself, like, fuck it, all right, I'm gonna work for myself. I'm gonna be free. All right, I'm gonna make money for myself and I'm gonna be in charge of my own decisions. And that was what basically triggered this entire journey of entrepreneurship, right? Like, I'm not in entrepreneurship because I necessarily want to build a business. I'm in entrepreneurship because I wanna be free, right? I wanna go ahead and play this game of life. And I knew that by getting into business, I could play the game of life a lot better because I would have less constraints. And I have a lot more responsibility as well. It's exactly what I wanted to do. The only issue was that when I had finished university and I got into entrepreneurship, because I had spent the last 7 years doing absolutely nothing but getting fucked and trashed, is that I had no life skills. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to think properly on first principles. I obviously didn't know how to market myself. I didn't know how to do sales. I had no assets or tools at my disposal that I could use to make this thing work. So I just looked on YouTube. I read books, I read blogs, and I'm gonna tell you, in the beginning, I was fucking useless. I was a copywriter and I was writing blogs on websites like Fiverr. So I was writing blogs for like $15 to $50 a pop. And the only way I knew how to get clients was by using these platforms to give me clients who paid me nothing. Basically, that goes on. I learned how to get my own clients. I pay for a mentorship to help me monetize myself even better. Didn't really turn out that good. I think the mentor that I paid was not worth the money, if I'm being fully honest. I then end up working for that mentor. And that basically got me into the online space, right? It was my first proper job where I was getting paid more than $2,000. I learned how to sell, I learned how to manage people, I learned how to turn people from being viewers of content into paying customers. I learned all the steps in between it needed to take to build enough trust to close somebody. And I kept on working there. If I'm being fully honest, it was a horrible experience. I ended up in the hospital because I was so stressed, because I had like a ruptured stomach lining. And at the end of it, the guy literally just threw me away because he found something new that was shiny and easier for him to make more money. Anyways, I get thrown out of that business, and that's when it truly starts where, wow, okay, I gotta start actually working for myself. I've got to build a business. I got to start relying on other people. And the thing about building a business and why I believe a lot of people fail is because they're unable to build a bridge between the younger versions of themselves that used to be traumatized. Let me explain what I mean by that. After I left that business, or rather after I was thrown out, I had launched a series of businesses where I would give it my all and I'd pour my blood, sweat, and tears into that business. I remember the first one was I started going back to copywriting. Then I launched an agency with a co-founder. And then after that, I went ahead and launched something else. So it happened 3 times where I started something. I gave it my all, but for some reason, it would always crash and burn. Weirdly, at the same time every single year, I'd last for like 12 months, where I'd give it my all, or start something, give it my all, get frustrated because it wasn't working well, give it my all even more, and then burn out and start all over again. And those were one of the hardest years of my life because sure, we were making money. There were some times we were making around 15 grand a month, which is quite good for a person who was like 20 years old at the time. But ultimately, we failed because success means having wins and success over a prolonged period of time, and we didn't have that, so we failed, or I failed. And after the third time that it happened, at the same time of the year, I was like, why the fuck is this happening? Like, this is not random, right? This is not due to misfortune. This is because there's something I'm doing which is causing this pattern to happen. And I really dove deep. This really led me to go ahead and figure out like what was wrong with me, right? And I did so many things. I went to therapy, I meditated, I journaled, I took psychedelics. I went really deep. And when the pain was the highest, when I was close to losing hope, I finally realized something. There was a quote from a movie, I probably found it as I was scrolling on Instagram, that said like, when it feels the scariest to jump, that's exactly when you have to take the jump. When I first saw that clip, I didn't really understand what it meant, but after going through this one thing, I understand what it meant, which is that I failed those businesses and all of those other tries because every time I had to do something that would face rejection, that would risk failure, that would put me in uncomfortable situations like cold calls, sending DMs, making pitches, taking risks, there would always be that part of me, like a small voice that would cause me to procrastinate and do something else instead to feel productive. So instead of making those calls or making those scary decisions, I would plan to make those calls. I'd plan to make those scary decisions. I'd create another strategy, right? And I'll do everything but the thing that I needed to do to grow. I didn't know it at the time, all right? But all this came to me as I realized the mistakes that I had made. And I asked myself, like, why did I do that, right? And I kept on putting myself in the comfort zone. And whenever I asked myself, like, why would I do that? Like, why would I put myself in the comfort zone? I thought that I had done all the work to heal as a person. I'd gone over my toxic exes. I was in a very healthy relationship. I'd done the work to bring me out of my mental health void that I was in a long time ago. And I realized that every time I had to take risks, a part of me would feel fear. And that part of me wasn't a logical part of me. It wasn't me as I was now. If I really looked at who that part of me was, it was a scared little kid. It was a scared little kid that when he was 12 years old, 11, 9, 14, he got traumatized and he got rejected and he got pushed away by something or someone. And that during those times when I got rejected or when I got traumatized in that younger version of me, I probably didn't know how to cope. When you're an infant, when you're a child, you don't know how to cope properly. So for me, the first coping mechanism that I came across was to become invisible. I would let people walk all over me. I'd become a victim. That's why I ended up doing so much drugs, and that's why I ended up doing having so many self-destructive behaviors when I was a teenager by becoming a complete degen, because I couldn't take ownership. I couldn't face the fear and act on it. I would always be passive, right? And I felt to realize that I was displaying that behavior for the entirety of my life. I was not letting myself take risks because there was a scared little version of me that wanted to stay safe, right? And I used to hate that part of me. I thought I was being a pussy. I thought I was being a little bitch. And whenever I did things where I was scared and a coward, I would talk down on that part of me. I'd be like, why the fuck did you do that, Matt? Why were you such a coward? Why couldn't you take the risk? Why couldn't you make it work? And little did I know that every time I was talking like that to myself, I was speaking to a younger version of myself. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Back to the story of when I made the realization that there was a younger version of me that was controlling everything that I was doing. And what it would do is that when I was confronted with big decisions to make, it would shoot fear signals and I would procrastinate it. So what this made me realize was, like, on the fourth time I wanted to start a business, because regardless of what I'm going to do, I'm going to be free. I'm going to work on my own terms. I'm going to create my own reality. And even if I crash and burn, or no matter how many times I crash and burn, I'm going to build a business. So naturally, when I failed, I started again, but I wanted it to be different this time, right? I didn't want to go through the same pattern and cycle all over again. So something had to change. And it changed when I realized that it wasn't new systems or new information that I had to take on in order to make this business work. I had to go ahead and heal the relationship I had with the younger version of myself. Because it was that younger version of myself that gave me people-pleasing syndrome. It was that younger version of myself that gave me imposter syndrome. It was that younger version of myself, that scared version of myself that made it so I wasn't confident in the things that I was doing. And obviously, if I can't be confident in my work and in my life, I'm never going to make it, right? So I needed to go ahead and fix a relationship I had with a traumatized version of me in the past. And coming back to what I was saying before is that I used to fucking hate that version of me. And every time I made mistakes in my present day, I would blame that part of me. I would talk badly to it. I would say, why do you do that? Why are you so stupid? Why are you being such a bitch? And it all changed when I visualized me not saying that to myself as I am now, but me saying that to a little kid, right? You don't speak to kids like that. They don't know any better. They're just scared. And when I realized that I was just making that traumatized version of myself even more traumatized by giving it hate, that's when I knew that I had been handicapping and fucking myself over for my entire life. Not because I didn't know enough, but because I just wasn't giving myself any love. Because if I wanted to get the confidence to make it, if I wanted to fully back myself, if I wanted to win my self-esteem, if I wanted to say, I'm going to build a business that's going to make $1 million a month and really back myself, I needed to really believe it. And the goal or the way to believe it wasn't to learn more, do more, pay more to certain things. It was to make that younger version of myself believe that we could actually do it. And for everybody watching this who's going through the same thing, I guarantee you that if you really look back and you try to visualize why you can't do certain things, promise you there's a part of you, an old part of you, that you haven't formed a relationship with, that is causing you to have fear whenever you look for more. And so once I made that realization, I spent all my energy into diving deeper, right? I even got to a point where I paid a hypnotist $500 for an hour, and she went ahead and put me under, right? In hypnotherapy, they calm you down, and they slowly get you to go calmer and calmer and calmer. And when you're really calm, you can go ahead and access really deep memories. So we did that for me, and we brought up the discomfort and pain that I would feel in the present day, and we used that as a compass to find different moments where I felt that when I was a child. We zoomed back really, really deep, and we found 3 instances where I felt that feeling very viscerally. One, when I was getting bullied in high school. The second, when I had to go to a new football club in a new country and meet a whole bunch of new kids that I had never met before. And the most earlier one, when my little sister was born, when I was scared of not getting the love from my parents because I would get somebody else to share their love. And what we did was she made me go ahead and talk to every single one of them. It was fucking weird. I had my eyes closed. She was like, if you see the person in front of you, that little version of yourself, I want you to talk to them. And I want you to tell them what you feel right now. And so me sitting down with my eyes closed, I remember seeing that younger version of myself, that scared little kid who was crying, who didn't know what was left and right, who didn't know what to do except for be invisible and stay safe. I could see him so clearly, and I just told him, like, I'm fucking sorry, man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that this entire time I didn't see that you were just a hurt little child. I'm sorry that every time we made mistakes, I was telling you off. I was blaming it on you and not taking any ownership on myself. I'm sorry that I beat you up by taking all those drugs when I was a teenager. I was so sorry for hurting yourself or hurting ourselves and to cause so much emotional damage that it stunted us for years to come afterwards. I said, I'm sorry, I apologize so much. And I told him that I loved him. And I said that over and over again. And when that session was over, a big hole that I used to feel inside of me that I didn't realize was inside of me was completely gone. And where I used to feel anxiety and emptiness, I now felt like support and wholeness. I felt like a part of me, the part of me that didn't believe in myself, the part of me that was scared, wasn't scared anymore. And it was because I was finally able to say I love you to that part of me. It sounds really fucking fruity, but it's exactly what I did. And believe it or not, once I did that, I started hiring new people into the business. I hired a salesperson who made me around like $20,000 in sales. In like a month and a half. I started launching events. I started putting all my clients together in a group, and I was super scared to do that before because I would think they would have judged me because there were not enough of them. I started taking more risks. I started backing myself. I started saying things with conviction. Like, my goal is to make the business hit $500,000 per month within the next 3 years and help 500 entrepreneurs launch and find freedom like I did for myself. And I can finally say that with my chest, that we're gonna actually do that, and that I have the means to do it by myself. And I couldn't say that confidently before. And what I'm trying to say is, like, there was a clear shift in my behavior and my mindset and my approach to life and business when I was able to build a relationship with that younger version of myself and just give it love. And so for anybody who's watching who feels like there are some invisible things that are blocking them from being the person or to embody the identity that they really want to embody, one thing I can tell you, at least what worked for me, is that no new systems, no coaching, no books will really help you. Most of the time is that there is a scared little version of yourself that's embedded deep into your unconscious mind that is stopping you from really believing in yourself. And the only thing you need to do is you need to say, sorry, I love you, thank you, and please forgive me. And create that bridge with them and that relationship so that you guys can work hand in hand and move through the next steps that you have to take aggressively and unapologetically together. And I think that if I didn't fix that version of me in the past, I wouldn't have gotten the results I got in the business, and I would have ultimately failed as an entrepreneur. And thanks to the work that I've done right now, I can just see the heights that we're going to climb to, and it makes me so excited. So for anybody who's going through the same thing, I hope you're able to find the answer in the past and crush it. Peace.